Welcome, TEI family, to another episode of The Everyday Investor. Today we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has came from humble beginnings and has invested in himself nonstop over the years, such that he's the chairman of multiple corporations. Please help us with, please help us welcome DEVON JOSLIN. Are you there, Devin?
Looks like we cut out there for a second. How we doing?
Yeah, no, for sure. Welcome, welcome. That's okay. Can you hear me? Uh, Are you there?
Oh, there we go. Now we're back. All right.
Okay,
Hey,
okay.
how we doing?
No, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, man. Yeah, it's West Michigan, so yeah, I don't know if it's gonna snow or if I'm gonna get sunburnt today. So
Yeah, no, it's been man, the weather definitely has been interesting. Seems like you said, you'll have a heat wave, whatever that means at this time of year. Then it'll be snow. So just trying to prepare for it all, which it's tough to do. But it seems like growing up in Michigan, we should be used to it by now. But I guess it never gets you never get used to it.
yeah, I mean at this point we're practically South Canada in terms of weather, so it's
Right. Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
you
So
develop a tolerance for cold.
yeah, for sure. No, you're absolutely right about that. And so I'm excited to do this. I know we are just talking offline a little in terms of this being a long time coming. I know we've been trying to kind of make this happen for a while now. So I'm excited that it has finally happened. You're doing a lot of good things, which we'll definitely get off into, especially as it relates to what you're doing today with the chairman of JosVon Holdings and the chairman of the Michigan Center for Economic Innovation. I think those are some great things that I definitely look forward to discussing, and as well as being an adjunct professor in college. That's definitely interesting and something I want to kind of parse out a little more in terms of how that came to be. But I always like to start at the beginning. In terms of, I know you grew up in on the west side of Michigan. You talk a little bit about uh, growing up on the west side of Michigan. Family life. Did you come from a wealthy family, or was it more of a middle class family, lower class family? Can you talk a little bit about life growing up on the west side of the state?
Yeah, I grew up in the northwest part of Muskegon, actually, so in Twin Lake. So if you're driving down M120 and you're about to hit Holton, Fremont, if you just quick hook a right by Ray's Mini Mart, I grew up right over there. Drinking those cotton candy milkshakes. I'm pretty sure I still have stomach problems from it. I don't want to throw any beef with them. But yeah, so I grew up out there. My dad worked at Pizza Hut, and my mom was busy volunteering on a bunch of nonprofit boards, a lot of community, different things. She worked as the friend of the court for Muskegon for a long time.
Okay.
So we definitely didn't grow up in the lap of luxury, to say the least. I mean, we didn't live in the most broke part of town, but it definitely wasn't the nice part of town either on Bear
Right.
Lake. So it wasn't until I was probably a little bit older, maybe middle school, high school, my dad started working in the automotive and furniture worlds. So then
Okay.
he started working out kind of in Grand Haven a little bit as a plant manager. Then my mother finished her education finally. At that point, I think she was the adjunct thing. She was a principal of a charter academy. She's kind of bounced around a few times. She just loves working with kids, which
Right.
is kind of where I got that itch for education. Um, but we never talked about college, about what I was going to study. It was just, hey, kid, you're going to go to college someday, and that was kind of the conversation ended. So I was a big soccer player most of my life until probably about 11th grade. I switched over to running, realizing that all the teams I wanted to play for in college, all the coaches I had been getting recruited by my entire life, they were all gone. And we don't have that scholarship money coming in to go to school. Like, even the University of Michigan, even with student loans, I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
No college savings, nothing like that. I think when my dad was younger, you could probably work a summer job and pay your college tuition. Uh,
Really?
so for me, it was about what I could afford. Yeah, so
Right.
I picked running and ended up going to community college for a semester just to get some running credentials for cross
Right.
country. I just didn't really have any credibility in that space, and then I ended up signing with Aquinas halfway through my freshman season. And then I transferred over, and then yeah, I finished grad school from there. love that place. Still go back and announce track meets every once in a while
Right.
because, they have nicer things than I did. Yeah, we had off-brand jerseys my entire career.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
never had sponsors, you burn through shoes every 4 weeks. Yeah, I was begging my parents for laundry money every week, like $2 to wash all my clothes. I'd wash them in a bathtub and then try to
Right.
hang dry them outside the window. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like the grapes of wrath, if you will, coming up,
Right. So,
even that first few years out of college.
right. No. So I guess growing up, I know you said that in terms of college, was it? It was. It seemed like it was expected that hey, you're going to go to college.
Yeah.
Was that just based off of just coming from a family that always preached education, or did your parents more so think, hey, this is kind of the way to a better life?
Yeah, I was part of that generation where it was like, no matter what you do, you could go get it was a joke. It's like, if you can't do math, you shouldn't be an accountant, but you're still probably going to end up getting a 4-year degree anyway. I see a lot of those, but, the army might be a great fit for them. But, for me, it was growing up in that generation. It's no matter what you do, if you go to college, you'll make $1 million in your lifetime. You'll be more meaningfully employed. You can get better financing on homes. I mean, there was all sorts of things that they would pitch you
Yeah.
from probably first grade until the day that you walk across that aisle with your diploma.
Right.
Uh, so, there wasn't really a choice necessarily. I actually wanted to go into the army after high school.
Really.
And my dad said, sure, you could do that after you get your degree, and then you can go to officer school and, that kind of thing. So it just was always kind of ingrained in me early on. And then my mother's family, her father was a migrant worker from Matamoros down in Mexico, and her mom actually a college degree. So a lot of my relatives on the Hispanic side of my family
Right.
did carry a lot of education because, in that culture, in that community, that's how you get out. That's how you
Right.
escape the trap of being stuck in cyclical poverty. That's how you avoid picking asparagus for the rest of your life. So, yeah, for me, it wasn't really a choice. I just kind of knew day one, I guess I'm going to school. It's just a
Right.
matter of which
Right.
one.
So did you? I know you said you played soccer growing up. Before until you switched to track and field or running your 11th grade year.
Mhm.
Was it always was the goal to try to? Because for me coming up, playing football, that was. And I wanted to play football, but the goal was always to try to get a scholarship to play football. I remember, like my freshman,
Mhm.
my sophomore year, playing varsity.
Mhm.
My first recruiting letter was to Princeton University. Uh, so it was always like a thing where it was like, okay, I know I'm gonna play football in college. So was the goal always to try to get a soccer scholarship, to go to college and continue to play soccer, or was it, hey, whatever, I just need a scholarship so I can afford to go to college, whatever that may be, whether it's soccer, whether that's running, whether it's academics. I just need a scholarship so that I can afford tuition to go to college.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was literally by any means necessary. It
Yeah.
was it was one of those not quite desperation, but I knew like, even if I took out a maximum student loan, I just couldn't afford school. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't
Right.
have a credit card to put books on at the time.
Yeah.
So for me, it
Okay.
was, I was good enough at enough different things, enough sports or academics that I was able to piecemeal some scholarships together to make something work. Ironically, Aquinas was, as an expensive private Catholic school, it was actually cheaper for me to go there than it would have been to go to Grand Valley, just because of how
Really?
much money that they offered between the academic side. Yeah, I was able to escape my undergrad with, I think, like $2,500 of student loans or something like that, and I'm pretty sure I
Wow.
took that to buy books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they
Yeah.
took great care of me there, but yeah. But,
So
for me,
so
athletics was a means to an end. Yeah, I mean, I knew I was never gonna be an Olympian. I knew I wasn't gonna pro
right.
soccer player. It was more of just, "Hey, this will pay the bills. I gotta do it."
Right. Okay. Okay. No, yeah, because I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this. At least like in we both grew up in Muskegon, and at least kind of where I grew up at, like football or sports in general, whether it's basketball, was uh like the way out to a lot of at least like the African
Mhm.
American community, and that's a lot of what they're banking on as they grow up in high school or grade school or whatever, is get a scholarship so that they can go to the next level, or go to college and kind of just make it out the environment that they made it out in. But a lot of times they think that they're going to go to the NFL or to the NBA. So it's not, I don't think it's necessarily a means to an end, but it's like, hey, we're thinking of taking this thing all the way. So that's interesting, just hearing your perspective. And even me, until I got to college and I realized that that was a good football player, but I wasn't a professional football player. That's a difference. But up until that point, it was like, okay, I'm trying to make it to the NFL, just like a lot of my childhood friends growing up. So that's interesting that you have more so of the, hey, I'm just trying to, just like make it out and get to college and have hopefully be able to pay for college. And I understand that this sports stuff is not going to last a long time. So I guess now, did you get recruited to like play at Aquinas, or was it something that you did as far as track and field once you got there?
Yeah, I ran 4 years at Aquinas. So for cross country, we won 4 conference titles while I was there. We were top 5 in the country, I think 3 times.
Wow.
We never fell out of the national rankings. In track, when you're competing, even in the Wolverine Hoosier Conference, we were running against a school called Indiana Tech, which at the time, they were recruiting kids that could have probably gone to the Olympic trials. They could run like 46, 47-second 400-meter dash indoors. And I
Right.
was like, I'm out, man. Yeah, I mean, we're going to
Yeah.
get second place. Everybody's fighting for second. So it was a good time. I mean, I loved it. I loved competing. I was one of those psycho competitors, even when I was hurt. I'd go into the training room and be like, can I just take like an Advil for my joint pain? They're like, dude, your knee doesn't have cartilage anymore. And I'm like, I don't care. I got to keep the scholarship money. I want to win. I want another banner hanging up, another trophy, whatever it was
Sure.
at the time. But yeah, I mean, when you're looking at a sport like running, I mean, yeah, it might pay for your school, but there's no real professional circuit. There is now, but
Yeah.
15 years ago, I mean, you would be lucky to get somebody to send you free shoes. I mean, there
Right.
wasn't really like a meal ticket that you're trying to stamp. And,
Yeah.
and
No.
traditionally running was always seen more of an Ivy League thing. It's always kind of one of those prep sports.
Right. No, and that is a good point. I think it seems like certain sports, uh, you look at it as more of a, you can make a career out of it, you can make good money, and other in some sports, maybe such as running, seems like if you go to the Olympics, you can just make some money with endorsements and things like that. But just as far as making a career out of it, it may be a little difficult with other sports. Now, I guess when you're in college, at what point did you always, have a business mindset, or like were you interested in other things as you were going through college, particularly undergrad?
I was one of those kids that was like, "Oh, I'm here now, so someone will tell me what to do."
Right.
That's because that's how you grow up. They tell you in kindergarten that if you don't go to college, you're a loser. So it's like, "Oh, cool, I'm a winner. I'm here."
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't know what I wanted to study. That was kind of peak recession. That 2008 recession started right around the time I was in high school and carried through my early college life. My mother being an educator, my dad never finished his college degree until we actually graduated the same year. So we were 31 years apart on our degrees. But
wow,
but yeah, so I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to go through for K through 12 education, get like a physical education
yeah,
certificate, be like a math teacher or a history teacher. But at the time, to be a teacher in the state of Michigan, I mean, to get a job shadow, you'd have to go to Arizona. I mean, there was, teachers were leaving in waves. And I kept talking. My dad's like, all my gen eds are done. I was dual enrolled in high school. So I had to pick a major my freshman year to start taking courses. And I was like, maybe I'll get a degree in like theology. I'll go get a certificate in Catholic theology and be a priest. So, I ran through like so many different options, and they're like, well, you have to take a vow of poverty. And I was like, well, Jesus, I love you, but not enough to live up and be in the right. So my dad told me, he's like, why don't you get a degree in just general business, and then, see what you like about it. And then you can pick within that degree, marketing, finance, accounting, whatever it might be. And so I signed up for a couple business electives and was like, ooh, it's like speaking a second language. It just kind of speaks to me. It was one of
sure.
those eureka moments when the clouds parted and the angels started singing, and all of a sudden, I mean, I became obsessed with it at that point. I was one of those people that was like, I would show up to class early. I would network with my professors. I'd go to office hours. I'd stay late. I mean, I'm still connected to quite a few people that I had as an undergrad and graduate student. And I had a few professors in those classes that are like, you're not a total idiot. So maybe a couple graduate classes, you might not screw that up. And at
Sure.
that time, I took a victory lap year like most athletes do. And it's kind of the end for you. I did a fifth year and was just like, I'm going to take some yoga and Pilates and, I'm going to hang out in the cafeteria for 5 hours. I got nothing to do. And so my advisor's like, you're going to start taking master's courses. And then after that, I started writing business plans. I started doing some consulting
Wow.
work, doing professional research with West Michigan Research Institute. Yeah, I just kind of fell into it, man, to be completely honest. It was all accidental. If I would have had it my way, I would be teaching elementary school students.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. And again, it seems like which we'll get off into later as far as the teaching, because it seemed like that came full circle, as
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
as an adjunct professor. But I guess you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, which again we'll get off into as we go through the interview.
Mhm.
Uh, but it seems like a lot of students, particularly athletes, but just students in general, as they're going through college, it's almost like which is, it can be a dangerous thing because we're talking about college being so expensive. If you don't have scholarships, or if you aren't fortunate enough, such as yourself, to have scholarships as they were going through uh, undergrad, and then you don't have the parents that can just pay for college, uh, you're just you can be just wasting money without knowing what you want to do. So I guess what advice would you have to students as they're going through college to better navigate that situation so they're not just taking classes, aimlessly, not knowing what they're going to do yet, but but racking up large student loan debt, which they obviously have to pay back at some point. Because that's like for me, I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who told me early on, even as I was playing football at Michigan State, hey, you like math and science, do engineering. So and yeah, just
Mhm.
taking his advice, so it worked out for me in that way. But a lot of students maybe uh don't have that person, that mentor that can kind of maybe talk some sense into them, and then they don't have the parents who maybe are educated to be able to kind of guide them in that way as well. So they're really just taking out loans and not knowing, like taking classes and not knowing what they're going to do. So I guess what advice would you give to that person so that they can kind of better navigate that situation?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation is always if you know you're gonna go to school and like your career goal when you're 18, you're gonna change your mind 20 times.
That's
Right, look
true.
at me, I want to be an elementary school
Yeah.
teacher. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I went the polar opposite direction, got a degree in business and finance.
Yeah.
Totally different things. You're not gonna know. The answer is you won't know. You at 16, you at 17, even at 20 or 21, you don't know what you're gonna do. You don't know what you're gonna want to do. So take classes that you find interesting, something that you find entertaining. But if it's going to be like sculpture, you probably don't need to get a degree in
Yeah, for
sculpture,
sure.
and
Yep.
take out student loans to get that
Absolutely.
degree. But if you take a finance course and you're like, oh man, maybe I want to start a business, then maybe you should take marketing and business law and intro to
Okay.
management and accounting, right? And start to understand some of these things. But I always tell people, I mean, community college is the way of the future. I think, those 2-year degrees where there's no fluff, and it's much more cost effective for people. So, like I said, I mean, if you're not trying to go somewhere for the prestige of the university, then start at CC and see what you like. Because
Okay.
worst comes to worst, you're only out maybe $2 or $3,000. You're not 50 grand in debt with a useless education. Uh,
No. Yeah.
but also college isn't for everybody.
Oh yeah, and I think that's a
So
great
many kids
point.
are showing up. Yeah,
Yeah, for
right.
sure. And I was going to say, because you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so if you just know, hey, you're dead
Mhm.
set, whatever reason, that hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Would you recommend college at all at that point, or is it another route that they can go to? Because I think opening up a business. I mean, that's a good thing about adjunct professors is they are out in the field doing it. They're not just talking theory, but they're out
Right.
doing it and kind of teaching the things that they're actually putting in play in real time. Uh, but a lot of professors that you get in college, they have never ran a business. They have, never, did a lot of the things that they're teaching, which is like mind-boggling for me. But if you're an entrepreneur, it just seems more uh efficient and effective, at least in my opinion, to like go out and start a business and maybe get with the right mentors to kind of help out the situation as opposed to take a lot of classes and get in debt. Which is, man, it's a crazy that the the government will give you a lot of money for student loans to get a degree that maybe is wasteless or useless, as opposed to maybe giving you a small business loan or something like that. That's still like mind boggling to me. But so you would recommend if you're an entrepreneur to maybe,
Yeah, it's harder even with for entrepreneurs, even with great credit, it's harder to get a business loan than
yeah,
it is for an 18-year-old to borrow 100K to go to school.
isn't that crazy?
It blows my mind, man. It kills me. I couldn't even get a secured credit card when I was 18 to buy groceries and laundry.
Right.
But they would let me sign up on $25,000 a year with no assets, nothing to back it up. And you can't, even in a bankruptcy, you can't get rid of your federal
And
student debt.
discharge it. Yep. And you can those will stack
Yeah,
with
so
you
it's
until the
like,
day you die.
oof,
That man, yeah.
yeah,
So
that'll
to me
probably be
personally,
money. Man,
yeah, it all seems like a finesse, but I guess we have to play the game. So I guess So now you're at the point you're in grad school and you're getting your degree. You talked about being bit by the business that bug. Can you tell me about like the first company that you start? Like and how old were you around that time?
So I started my first, I think I formed my first LLC just so people could pay me, with a 1099 basis. I was 22, 23 years old, maybe 21. No, I was pretty young. I was still in grad school. I was 20 or 21 years old when I started that out. And, I was doing contract market research. No one's going to pay you to consult when you're still sitting in grad school
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
look like you're 12. Nobody wants to pay that guy. I was wearing a suit that was too big for me to show up because that's what they tell you to do in the career center. They're like, oh, wear your best suit. So I'm running out to Goodwill trying to find a jacket that fits. And that was before thrift shops were cool. That was before thrifting was the style. So I looked ridiculous. Uh, walking in there and for cross country, everybody likes spring shorts, Steve Prefontaine. So I still had a mustache, long hair, and I mean it just looked ridiculous. I looked like straight out of the '80s. I was part of the Lionel Richie fan club. So, it was like, yeah, I was young. I went to the county courthouse right in the Calder Plaza, right downtown GR. Took my $10, proudest moment of my life. They stamped that paperwork for me and like, congratulations. I was like, sweet. So I'm rich now? Like, what do I do?
yeah, 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 yeah.
And then, yeah, I went over to my bank and I gave them all the paperwork, opened up a bank account, got that first consulting check. I think it was like $27 or some odd. It was like a very specific amount. And, yeah, and I was so pumped to open up that account, and then I realized that to have a business checking account, I had to pay $12 a month of fees if I didn't have more than, like, 5 grand in there or something, so
Mm.
50% of my revenue went out the door just in banking fees. Hard lessons that you don't learn in the classroom, right?
Yeah,
It's like, no one's gonna sit there and tell you, you open up your first bank account and, it's gone. It's like South
right,
Park, where you're talking about investments in the market, and then it's like, "Yeah, we're gonna put it here, and it's gone."
right.
And you're like, "Whoa, really? I'm broke again?" Like, ah. That's kinda what happened, and I took that business and I was able to scale it even after grad school, and then I started working on doctoral studies and I started adjuncting a little bit here just to pay the bills. I was like, "Hey, you guys will
Right,
pay me, and give me free parking downtown GR? Sweet, I can walk to clients and
right.
whatever," and I started hanging out with a lot of attorneys at that point. I started learning the legalese, just kinda how to work on stuff. I was able to do this thing. I created a study. It was called brand indexing. It was an algorithmic expression that defines how consumers interpret brands, and it gives you a mathematical probability that somebody's going to consume your product or do business with you based off top of mind awareness, guided awareness, target adaptation, brand personality, and market share. So there were a lot of different things I was working on at the time that people were interested in, where I was able to go and create these consulting dashboards. So then you're able to bill a little bit more money when
Yeah,
you have some
yeah,
proprietary,
right,
that work in the patent space and working
yeah,
with IP,
yeah.
right? That's the only asset you have to your name. I couldn't feed my cat, but I was able to bill people an arm and a leg. And you scale that up, you scale it up. I sold that company. They tried to fire me at one point. I brought on some partners, and because I was too young and inexperienced, and you're going to a Coca-Cola or a Lockheed Martin or a Boeing, and you're trying to convince them that you can predict what consumers are going to do. They might listen to you, but if you don't have a Stanford professor backing you or whatever it might
Yeah.
be, these academics have never done the thing. They just talk about it a lot. They're like, I don't know, this guy kind of, maybe we'll see. They always kept saying like, "We'll see, we'll see," and
So
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 I
you
pushed
so you
way
brought
too hard for a couple things, and they tried to fire me. Yeah,
hold on, so
it's crazy.
you started the company because this seems like the guy like a Steve Jobs situation where you started the company, you brought on others to help you with the company, yet they
Yeah.
tried to, like, fire you?
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, when you take other people's money, you got to remember they're trying to make money back. No one's just
That's
gonna give you a handout.
that's
And
true.
growing up the way that I did, simple life in the woods of Twin Lake, right off River Road. It's like I didn't know how money works. I didn't understand it. I remember my stepdad sat me down one time when I was telling him, "Oh, I'm going to start this business, or I'm going to go buy something, buy a piece of real estate." And he's like, "Can you balance this checkbook?" And I was like, "What's that? How do you do that?" And he's like, "Well, if you can figure out these things." He's like, "No, you're not mature enough. You're not ready for it." And I didn't listen. So then I started taking on all these investors and taking all this money from all these people. They're great people. I'm still friends with most of them too. And hindsight, always connecting the dots, looking backwards. It's always 2020, right? They were right. I was wrong.
Right.
But I wanted to do some acquisitions at that point, and they're like, "No, dude, we're a consulting company. Like, we can give you money to be a consultant, not to go out and buy some manufactured homes that you're going to rent for $1 a square foot." I was like, "Yeah, but that's where the money's at." It's the brand couldn't survive without me out in the field doing the consulting, but I was
Right.
so focused on doing other things to diversify that I was ignoring the core competency that made revenue. So we
Right.
started taking slight losses, not big losses, but slight losses. And I didn't have enough money to stand on my own 2 feet where I could pay people back or, buy anybody out. So they're like, "Yeah, man, so we're gonna fire you, but we want you to stay on the board, and then we're gonna hire someone to do the job that you used to do, and you have to advise that person."
Really?
And I
So
was
hold
like,
on.
"Oh,"
Like,
that's like
did
the
they
only
pay you for
yeah.
advising that person?
Oh, yeah, I still got paid. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
not as
Okay.
much as I was making. And
Right.
I had no decision-making authority. Like, literally, they're like, "Okay, well, now we're gonna consult with the car dealership." I was like, "What? That's not our brand. We're going after Coca-Cola. We just did a case study on Apple. We're not gonna work with this Chevy dealer." And they're like, "Sucks to suck, man. They paid the bill. Yeah, you're gonna do it, and you're gonna buy his little Jeppy here." And I was like, I don't know, man." So then I threatened to walk, and they're like, "Okay, that's fine. We'll replace you." I was like, "Ooh."
Yes,
It was one
sir.
of those, like, ice cold moments. Well, like I said, though, it's one of those great moments in history when keeping it real goes wrong. I always like
Yeah.
to think of myself as a, just working class kid coming up. You act like a prize fighter all the time. Well, eventually someone's gonna knock you out. And, I got humbled pretty quick when you have to run your own company and you don't get paid for it and your name's still on the door. I was like, "Oof." And then
So,
eventually we were able to buy it out. But yeah, that was
okay.
a long process. That was a long 2 years.
Oh, yeah, so I was gonna say, how did you kind of rectify that situation? Because I know you said you guys end up selling it. So were you able to, I guess, get back into your original position, or how did that all work out in the end with that particular company?
Yeah, so I brought on one partner at that point, and he was able to basically buy everybody else out. So then it was just him and I back in the driver's seat. He wanted his name on the door too, so I was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, so we changed the brand a little bit. So it went from, I think it was like the JosLin Consulting Group, and then it went over to JosLin Jones, which became a holding company at that point. He liked the idea I had of you have a consulting arm for a couple projects a year, you have real estate and management, you have startup seed money. As a non-accredited investor at the time, I think you have to have like assets worth $1 million or something like that to be
Okay.
accredited according to the I group to the SEC. Yeah. And so we didn't have that, but you can justify that if you have business acumen or you can make those decisions, you can still invest in a startup as long as it's part of a friendly round and it's not a public offering. And so we were doing that. There was a couple startups we liked. We wanted to incubate. I was like, I can consult with these companies for equity, or we can give them a little bit of seed money and we can consult with them and then just ride the wave. We can sign convertible notes at a period of 12 to 24 months and make our money back. So, I mean, we really started scaling that way. And then he retired and I turned it over into JosVon, which we formed in June of 2022. So we rolled over all the IP, all the assets that were worth keeping. Brought on my former banker. He's a VP of a bank, and he wanted to get into it. So yeah, we're working on some big deals now. So it's amazing. You grew up as a simple hick from Twin Lake, and now you're
Yeah.
hanging out and whining and dining, looking at multi-million-dollar real estate deals, and people are flying you all over the country to consult on things. It's kind of fun. It's like sheep in the big city.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like that sounds like a lot of fun, and that you're doing some big things. So it seems like the Jocelyn, the consulting group, just kind of morphed into what it is today.
Yeah, it happened
Okay.
pretty organically too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, it seems like you were doing consulting. Now you have a consulting arm, but it's much more than like a consulting a company. It seems like you have real estate and uh some other branches of the company. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the beauty is in a recessed economy, one of the only good things that happens as you're experiencing mass layoffs and
Yep.
economic conditions change. Those are things that are outside of your ability to control. That's part of that external environment. What ends up happening is people get the itch for entrepreneurship. Which provides guys like me the opportunity to give people guidance. Before you allocate your two scarcest resources is time. You can't make more of it and you can't make less of it, but you can definitely
Right.
waste it. And then money, right? That's something that's really hard to do, especially when inflation's rising and wages are remaining stagnant. Money becomes a much scarcer commodity. And those are the two things that are required for entrepreneurship. And when people are about to sit down and spend money, I deal with a lot of people who are like, oh, I mortgaged my home and I put a bunch of stuff on a credit card, but my business isn't doing well. Can you help me? And I'm like, oof, no, it's too late for you. It's like that movie Armageddon, where the
Yeah.
astronaut's about to cross that zero barrier. It's like, well, even if Bruce Willis blows that bad boy up now, you're still going to lose Texas. And
Yeah.
so for us, it's about trying to find these people early on. And it's the same work with the Michigan Center for Economic Innovation. We're really working with people that don't have either the business acumen, the educational piece, or even just access to resources. We can provide that for them before you go out and take money or take bad loans or take investors' money. As a guy who's been burned a couple times, by bringing on investors, everybody wants to have an idea. And if they're signing a check, they get to have a say. So, keeping entrepreneurs away from the sharks is a big goal that we have. But even with JosVon, we're finding pre-revenue startups. I don't know how familiar you are with those, but really they're still in the idea phase and they haven't quite gotten to commercialization or product launch. So if you can find them there, that's the sweet spot where they're riding that innovation curve, right? They might be an early adopter. Almost nobody's developing breakthrough innovations. When I say breakthrough innovation, I'm like, think of like the printing press or, the invention of mathematics. Yeah.
Or the iPhone
People
or
are like, well,
something
Steve
like.
Jobs was a breakthrough innovator. And I'm like, I don't think the iPhone really, had the same impact as written language, but yeah, I could
Yeah.
be wrong. You
Right.
could argue.
Right.
But, finding these people at that stage is crucial because what'll end up happening is they'll either take personal debt, personal loans, and they don't have a business plan in place. They don't have a strategy. They don't have an end user in mind. I mean, how many good business ideas do people come up with every single day? I mean, I have like 5 a day.
Yep.
A great,
Yep.
great product, great green ideas. They could solve a lot of problems, but I don't have an end user in mind. And the end user is the most important part of the process because if you don't have an
For
end user,
sure.
nobody's going to buy it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's like, well, look forward and think backwards. Mercedes-Benz in the 1890s had electric vehicles, but people were still, using bathrooms in their backyard that was a hole with a wood box around it. So, an electric vehicle probably wasn't the right time. So
No,
trying to get
and
these people before they spend all the time and money. Yeah, you
yeah,
got to get them before they burn themselves.
for sure, for sure. No, that even going to that electric vehicle thing, I come across patents all the time where Nikolai Tesla, which is who was around way back then, he had patents on like that were geared towards electric vehicles. But come on now, at that point in time, the internal combustion engine was just really taking off in those gas powered vehicles. So no one was going to, thinking about an electric vehicle back then. So I think that's a big part and a great point to just understand who the end user is and who the end user is and whether or not I guess society as a whole, I guess, is ready for it, like the invention or the innovation that I guess the person is trying to come up with, because it may be too early or maybe missed the boat if it's kind of on to something else in society. So and I think that's a big part of it, or that's an interesting part of it. So I think I was reading somewhere you initially provided like 50,000 in direct funding to pre-revenue startup ideas, in addition to the 1,200 hours of free consulting. Now, is that with the
Mhm.
essentially the holding company, JosVon?
I went with the innovation center too. So aggregately between those two things,
Okay,
and then I advise students. I think close to about 1,000 business plans a year.
really?
Something like that. I hear close to 1,000 pitches. So far, and we're just wrapping up Q1. Closing the books on that for 23, and I've already seen close to 300. So, and that's between students that want to get an entrepreneurship certificate, so they might be, redoing their career. People reaching out to JosVon looking for seed money. People reaching out to MCFEI trying to be part of our fellowship. We'll only admit four new clients per year into that fellowship where you receive that funding and that hands-on consulting work. But we'll still have summits, conferences, lunch and learns, that kind of stuff. We're still providing that educational piece to people because that's really what it's about is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And before you go and blow all your money that you don't have, it's easier to spend other people's money actually
Yeah,
than
for
it is to
sure.
spend your own. And so it's like, yeah, man, before you do any of that, let's just figure out like, do you even have a viable business idea?
Yeah.
And so when we're providing that funding, I did that individually. I realized that a lot of these, especially in the BIPOC community, it's kind of the cool thing to do, right? It's like, oh, this Black-owned business, we just gave them $10,000. Look at us, we're so cool, And there's a lot of programs that exist for that because it's kind of the new thing. it's a new marketing tactic. It's got a lot of value. It's great for target adaptation. People like social causes. Inclusion is a big thing, and I think there's a lot of room for conversation on that style of community investment. The problem I have with it is that you're finding people that are different colors or they look different, but they're still coming from more or less the same place. When you have a startup that has $250,000 in revenue, 3 years of tax returns, and pretty solid credit, A, you're not looking at a startup anymore.
Right.
B, the people that you're allegedly trying to reach. I mean, I didn't even meet that criteria until a couple years ago. Nobody would have touched me with a grant. So it's like you're not trying to find people that it's going to be transformative or change their lives in those communities that you're targeting, because nobody meets that criteria. So I decided I'll just do it myself. I had one of those Marvel moments where I grabbed my gauntlet with the Infinity Stones. Like, I'll just do it myself. So I
Right.
started, taking some of these clients that I couldn't help necessarily as a consultant, but it's like, oh, you have a solid idea. You just need money.
Right.
You got a great idea. You just need some money. Okay, let's do it. Friends and
That-
family around. You're not going to take money from investors. I'm not going to send you to a venture capital group. I'll just do it myself and I'll help you out. You can call me whenever you want. Here's my cell.
So,
And
so,
I started doing that, and it worked.
so would you look at yourself as a bridge? So, is the goal is to get to the point where now they can qualify for those, I guess, grants, or is it more so, hey, you can come to me and you don't necessarily need them after or once you come to me?
Well, in a perfect world, the goal would be that they don't need to go out and get that grant money, but
Sure.
if they're doing well enough and leave it for somebody else. But the idea is that we'll get them to that point where now they can go in front of these chambers or these innovation incubators or these business accelerators, and they can actually qualify for these programs. Because, like I said, if they're holding on to all this money, you got to remember, I mean, nonprofits, they all have to make money. They've got overhead that they have to hit too. So when they're taking of these huge federal funds, I mean, there's an overhead allowance for that too. So they're going to be tight on what they're going to let in. It's not that they're expecting a return on the investment, but they don't want to just waste that when they could have spent it with someone else. So their
Gotcha.
criteria is completely appropriate for where they're at
Yeah.
with the regulations that they have. So our job is just guerrilla style. Let's just get you to that point where you can
Yeah.
stand in front of them, and as long as you can check those boxes off, then you should be able to get. There's a statistical probability you'll probably get at
Right.
that point. And I have so many relationships with retailers all over the country. You've got a consumer product, great. We might be able to put you in Meyer,
Yeah.
Costco or whatever it is, and do some sort of controlled, simulated market testing. Companies love that. They love to be able to see traction in the marketplace with real world data. But if you're an entrepreneur that doesn't know how to do that, I know people with PhDs that don't even know the 5 steps of business planning. So,
So
it's a lot of just learning on the go.
right, right. No, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, can you kind of talk a little bit about the 5 steps of business planning, just for those out there who maybe don't know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I mean, you got to think about business planning in like a 5 step process. The first thing is the situational analysis. Before you even think about a product, who's your end user, right? Who's this end user that you're going to try to get? That's going to be your target market. Then you think about like what kind of things that they deal with on any given day. I live in West Michigan. I might get sunburnt or I might get frostbite in the same day. What kind of issues am I going to run into when I walk out to my car in the morning? Well, I need a coat. So now I can develop a jacket. That's a situational analysis. What market conditions exist with that target end user in mind
Yep.
that have led you to create this business idea? So now you can start connecting the dots going backwards. Well, now we have a product. Now we have a product that'll get your ideal situation and your reality to line up. But the only way to meet that ideal situation is to buy my product. Otherwise, your life's going to be miserable.
Right.
That's marketing, right? So that's part of that market research and the marketing environment. That's step two. Then you're going to move into your operations planning. You're going to start looking at the product development, which, hopefully at that point in time, you've been able to budget for some prototyping and actually getting it out and getting some real consumer feedback. So then you're going to move in from there. Then you'll look at your financials and your controls. So does the budget work? How much money do I need? At what point am I going to break even? What are some dates that I can put on a calendar? Strategy is all about measurable and predictive things. So if I'm saying I think in month 6, I'll have product to market. So by month 18, I'm expecting to break even. Great. That's measurable and that's predictive because it's empirical. I can use numbers to figure it out. If like you're telling me you're gonna make $100,000, you made 30 by month 18, you're getting a 30%, man. You're not passing the class,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
For sure.
You
Sure.
know, we know that that strategy isn't working. Now we can go backwards, and then we can move on to contingency planning, which is the hardest part because that's where you have to sit down and preemptively think, if things go wrong, what do I do? Yeah, step 5 is always the hardest part, right? It's
Yep.
like, oh, force majeure. Well, if there's a pandemic, if you would have said that to me 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
If they
Right.
would have said, oh, well, you know, the economy might shut down and, you know, people can't buy gardening stuff at the store, I would have laughed you out the door and been like, you're so full of it. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. But now I'm like, yeah, man, you know, think about supply chain disruption and global
Right.
pandemics as part of your business planning.
Yep.
You know, what about if the electricity goes out? If revenue exceeds your expectations, what do you do? Do you pay yourself a bonus and go buy a Porsche, or you know, are you going to retain your earnings and try to scale and grow? Maybe hire some
Yep.
employees.
Yep.
You know, in 5 years, are you going to franchise your business? You know, those are all things that come in that fifth step where you're trying to look ahead. And like I always tell people, I'm like, it's easy to connect the dots looking backwards, and when you're looking forwards, it looks like chaos. But hindsight's always 2020. So when you're
Yeah.
thinking about that end goal, it's easy to put it
Yep.
together.
Yep. No, it's almost like reverse engineering the whole thing and kind of
Mhm.
starting from the end and kind of reverse engineering. And man, I actually really
Exactly what
like
it is.
yeah, I really like that approach because man, this stuff, especially the way my mind work as an engineer, uh, very logical, very analytical. But and as you, I'm pretty sure you know, especially when you're dealing with people's ideals and what they're trying to do, they get like emotionally tied to this stuff, which seems like all the logic and that goes out the window. But just having a simple step process that you're following. I mean, you would think that is like it's just logical or reasonable or like a no brainer. But I was actually in the barber shop a couple weeks ago, and it was one of the barbers. He's like the owner of the barber shop. He was talking about how he wants to go to this subscription based scenario where, say, one of the clients pays him $100 a month for like 3 haircuts. He guaranteed 3 haircuts. They pay him $100 a month. He's like, oh yeah, if I get 100 haircuts, I mean 100 people to sign up for it. That's whatever that is a month. What $10,000 or whatever the case may be. And again, it sounded good as he was talking about it, but and I was just trying to get my haircut. I think this was like the morning time, so I'm kind of still trying to wake up. But as I was thinking about it later, I'm like, it's probably going to be a tough thing for a number of reasons. Because if you're saying, okay, you spend 30 minutes on a haircut, and you're cutting 100 times 3, so you have 300 haircuts. Well, 100 people when you're cutting them 3 times. Yeah, so 300 haircuts and or 300 hours worth of
Mhm.
haircut. Well, 300 haircuts a month, and say a haircut costs. I mean, it takes you, I guess, a half hour. And I was just kind of doing the numbers on things. And I guess what it came down to for me as I was doing the numbers on it, it's like I'm not sure you have that much time to actually make that possible. Like over the course of a month, if you kind of maybe you spend 100 hours a month cutting hair, and say you need it based on your plan and your strategy or what you're thinking, you maybe need it 150 or 300 hours, and it's like it just unless you're just working nonstop every day, it's probably not going to kind of work out like that. But he, whatever reason, hadn't thought about that side of it. He just had this great ideal, and he's kind of thinking about the money aspect of it and all that. But he's not, from the number standpoint, he's not breaking it down and say, okay, this doesn't make sense based on how I'm thinking about it at this point in time. So I think your 5 step process is just, man, that's good and refreshing to hear, because I'm pretty sure, as you know, it seems like a lot of people, they don't think about it in those terms, which is why they are in a pickle at one point or another throughout the process.
Yeah, and you got to remember too. I mean, entrepreneurship is the successful people aren't any smarter than anybody else.
Right.
They
Yep.
just sometimes the outside economic forces were in their favor, or they were just in the right place at the right time. I mean, I'm a great example of that. I just kept falling into the right
Yep.
situation, so I was just ready to go when it hit me. But you know, there was no grand strategy at first, and now there is. But you know, at the time, it's like I said, you're connecting the dots looking backwards. But the thing that people get really caught up on, the mistake that I see a lot of people make, including my students, even in the marketing world, is it's like, great idea, great idea, great idea. So this has to work, right? I mean, the numbers are there. I mean, I can do this many things. And it's like, well, there's this thing called managerial accounting, right? And financial management, where sure, your top line revenue might increase, but what's the cost of that revenue?
Yep.
Is it costing you $1 to make 10? Great, you profited 9. Well, I want to make $100 now. Cool, but it costs you $95 to make that 100.
Right.
So you're actually making less money than you were, because now you have to get more equipment. Now you have more hours that you log in. Your overhead went up. Your electricity bill's through the roof because you're cutting, 300 extra haircuts that you weren't expecting. So it's like when you take a moment and you just pause and you think about the strategy. Strategic thinking is hard for a lot of people. I mean, you were an athlete. I'm sure, your coach probably hammered that into you. It's like,
Yep.
it's always those next couple moves that you have to be thinking about.
Yep.
Somebody's coming straight at you. You've got 2 options. You can go left, you can go right. It's like, well, what about that third option where I try to run them over? Well, strategically speaking, that's probably not your best, outcome, right? You're trying to measure something and predict something. And when you think about it that way, it's going to change, your perspective on things, because every great idea that you have might have to sit on a shelf for a while because the numbers just don't work, or the, strategy is just a mathematical function of risk, and risk is usually measured in time and money. And so it's like, oh, this is going to cost me way too much money, or it's going to cost me way too much time, and I want to get home and hang out with my kids, or, whatever it
Yep.
might be. For
Yep.
those people, there is an opportunity cost that people don't think about especially when they start a business. And then you have guys like me that want to invest in you, but it's like, I'm only going to invest in you if there's money on the table.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
you taking my check and my green is going to help you earn that revenue, so I get paid
Yeah.
back. That's a win for everybody.
Right.
So, and these are notorious for that. And these capital groups are notorious for, like, I'm hoping you fail so I can piece you out and then sell your IP out to someone else that knows what they're doing. That's what makes the economy go round. So, it's a shame that, and you can't save everybody. One of those strategic questions that plagues people is, it's like, do I know I don't know everything? And do I know I can't save everyone? It's like, yes. But the people that you do reach, it makes a difference.
No, for sure. And that's definitely a point well taken. You said something earlier, and I actually read, an article that you had that was done on you, where you're talking about kind of creating your own luck. Can you talk about that? Because I'm a big proponent of that. Just even in like my life, I know hard work is very important. And you're talking about being at the just being lucky as far as being at the right place at the right time. But I always think that, again, as you may agree with, just creating your luck and through hard work, through putting yourself out there to the point where you can get lucky, or you can create that luck. I remember I was doing an internship at Ford Motor Company, and like 10+ years ago, as as an engineering intern, and it was a guy who he was in-house attorney, in-house patent attorney, and man, we just had very similar backgrounds. He was a football player at Wisconsin. He's like maybe say 20 years older than me, but he was a football player at Wisconsin, an African American running back. Man, we're all just like the same thing. I was football player at Michigan State, running back, and we just had very similar similar paths. And I knew I wanted to go to law school at this point. He had been to law school, and man, I had no I had no reason other than my curiosity to reach out to this guy and just say, man, how did you do it? Just again, me being curious, and I did that, and because I mean, he was an attorney, I was an engineer, so this was like two completely different things. But I reached out to him, and say 10 years later, he's VP, head of IP at a company, and it's a billion-dollar company and a multi-billion-dollar company. He's like, hey, I want to do work with you, and so I look at that as kind of creating my luck with just working hard and being at the right place at the right time. But that's kind of due to efforts of my own, as opposed to kind of something else like lining up
Yeah,
and me being in
the universe didn't conspire to
yeah, for
pull
sure.
those strings for you, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You
for
earned
sure.
it. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like when you're running, like, you still have to put the miles in. I raced guys that were 4-minute milers or whatever, and they were going to Australia to run. I mean, just crazy levels of talent, and but it's like on any given day they can have a bad race, but if you haven't put in the work, you're not going to be in a position where you could steal that win.
Capitalize off of it.
And the clock doesn't lie. So
Yeah.
you still have to put that hard work in, but eventually, at some point in time, lightning might hit.
Right.
I'm glad I learned that early on, because I'd probably be a a lunch lady, or driving a bus, or doing something for fun. I would love to work in a running shoe store if anyone's ever hiring. I'll talk to high school kids about track bikes all day. So,
Right, right, right. No, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Now, this is a question I just thought of as kind of we're talking about this, because again, it seems like you've had your fair share of kind of bumps and bruises in a business space. like this sports, growing up, playing sports in college, did that help you with that in terms of developing thick skin and all those things? Did it play a role in that or not really?
It teaches you how to deal with adversity. I mean, there's nothing harder to do in life. I'm absolutely convinced, and I've done some hard stuff, but
Yeah,
endurance, like distance running, is the loneliest, hardest thing you'll probably ever go through. You know, it's you're trying to tell your body's biological reaction is to stop, and you're convincing yourself to keep going.
right,
And it's like all these signals are going off. So it's like, yeah, it's like it hurts, but you got to remember the dude that's sitting right next to you and you're coming out of that straightaway, trying to hit that tape first. It's like he's hurting just as bad as you are. So then it's just the plank to failure, right? It's like, well, who can dig a little bit deeper? Who can go to the well? Who can,
yeah,
kind of hang on, right? It's all about that mental fortitude. And I'm convinced that it's mostly mental and emotional control. And it's the same thing in the business world. I mean, you're going to get hit with so many different things. And it's like, but I know not to panic because it's just part of the plan, right? It's part of that. Okay, this is going to lead me to that next stop. Then when I look backwards, I'm going to laugh about it. I laugh about getting fired from a company that had my name on the door. I think it's hilarious. I tell it to my students all the time. I'm not ashamed of it. I was an arrogant 25-year-old dude that thought he knew everything, and it turns out I was wrong.
right.
It's a lesson well learned. It helps you take those beatings and you learn from it instead of just becoming a victim about it. Then you learn and then you improve for the next time. And that way when you're scaling something, you know what to expect and you know how to deal with it. And it's not a surprise. But
No, that,
yeah, I mean, looking back on it, that athletics piece, it shapes you and also gives you that discipline too, because you know
I,
that you have to put those miles and you need to log those hours.
right. Yeah,
I love working with athletes. Even we bought the first pro indoor soccer team in West
I
Michigan
was gonna talk about
back
that.
in August. We're actually, yeah, we're heading into a playoff cycle here. The championships will be in Chicago on April 1st and 2nd for Major League
Nice.
Indoor Soccer. We're looking at a pretty nice spot for that. So hopefully we can bring home a trophy to Grand Rapids. I think that'd be great. But it's like watching these guys compete at that level. It's like being born again. You kind of,
Yep.
I retired from running in 2016. And I love soccer. That was my first love. And I'll still go out and kick the ball around with these guys. But they're just that the hand of God reached down when these people were born
Yep.
to convince them that they should be a soccer player. I mean, I was good, but I wasn't their level of good.
Yeah.
And seeing that compete, that's the perfect marriage of business and sport. And that's what gets me really excited is seeing somebody who's like, yeah, I played in college. I wasn't, I played in Europe for a couple of years, but I'm coming back now, kind of like the NBA G League. It's
Yep.
like you might go play in Spain for a little while and get beat up, and then you're going to come back to, West Michigan. And so we're giving this opportunity to these people to continue to live their dream, and I get to live mine by
Yep.
by being a part of it. So it's a win for everybody. It's one of those most gratifying things, especially when you see kids running around with their scarf on and,
Right.
they want to shake hands with the players. It's just like, there's just nothing like it.
So no, and I want to kind of parse this out a little more. How did that come like about? Because that's a pretty big deal to have the first, essentially professional indoor soccer league, in West Michigan. How did that deal come about? That man, that's as I was kind of reading that and kind of looking at that, man, it's like, man, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it was cool. A guy that's on my nonprofit board, his name's Lewis. He's the co-owner. He's the head coach now, actually, too.
Okay.
He's killing it. I nicknamed him Lightning Lou. He played soccer at MSU. So he's a fellow Sparty with you.
Nice.
But yeah, he's a good dude. He pitched me this idea. I think it was back in August. I had just come back from a business trip where I was closing up an acquisition on the vodka brand, the Zini Vodka, which is the
Yep.
first Asian female-owned
Yep.
distiller in West Michigan, which is pretty neat.
Yep.
Yep. So we were closing up the convertible note on that and doing our due diligence and making sure that she had what she needed from us. I went down, to the Godfather, to hat in hand, down to my guy down in Bloomington. He's the OG when it comes to telling me when I'm wrong or when I'm being stupid. So he gave it his blessing over a cigar at Briar and Burley on down in Bloomington. So when I came back, Lewis is like, "Hey, I've got this idea I want to run by you just to see," because we work with entrepreneurs in our incubator and our hands-on coaching. And he's like, I kind of want to take that process and write a business plan to bring a pro soccer team to West Michigan. And we do have a kind of a tier two, like an amateur team that's part of the MASL out in Muskegon. They play at the old LC Walker Arena, and I think it's
Yep.
the Trinity Health
Yep.
Arena now. Muskegon Risers, great team. Matt Schmidt, he's a soccer genius. He went to my high school. He was the guy that we all looked up to growing up, and he's killing it. But Muskegon doesn't have the economy to be able to
Yeah,
bring a major
yeah,
league
for
sport
sure,
there. It's
for
hard
sure.
to fill tickets, and Muskegon. I mean, I got made fun of to be a soccer player. Kids were trying to beat me up because I was running around in a soccer jersey when I was a kid because it's a football town.
Yeah, no, that it's football for
So
sure.
yeah,
Yep, no, it's definitely a football town.
yeah, man, and it's a little backwater town on the Lake Shore, so it's pretty hard nosed, but and soccer is known for flopping. You got dudes on the ground going, oh, and it's like, bro, you got kicked in the shin, man.
Yeah,
Get
that's
up.
man.
So taking some of that, it's hard to package that as a product to a city on the Lake Shore, but in a city like Grand Rapids, there's a huge appetite for it. And we're coming up on the World Cup. The next World Cup can be in the United States. I mean, all the economic forces are aligning
Yep.
in a big way. And I've been really pleased with the turnout of I mean, I think we can fit like 1,200 people in our practice facility that we're playing in right now because we just didn't have enough time to go and talk to Van Andel about playing there, going to a
Right.
different arena. So it was like, well, we'll just make do with our practice facility. And we crammed like 1,200 people in there, and it's great. We have a dance team and we have a DJ, and you can buy beer there. It's great. People love it. But I didn't expect it to really work. When you invest in a company like that or into a business idea, Lewis is smart enough, and he's worked with me on enough different things or observed how I process. So he sat down, wrote the business plan, gave me the pitch. We did our investment. I found a couple other people to work with him. So then I'll work with him on the business side of things, and he can focus on soccer.
Yep.
That's really where he shines. He's a soccer guy. At that level, I might be able to give you some rudimentary advice, but I'm pretty outdated. He really gets it. So I can walk you through sponsorships and business operations
Right.
and financial cycles, and he's talking about player psychology. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, great. Can they score goals? Let's sign these, but let's get them under contract. Let's make sure we have reliability insurance in place. What's the league doing? So yeah, he pitched that to me in August, and we started our season in November. We hosted our first preseason tournament, so we had a pretty quick
Wow.
turnaround. It was about 12 weeks from start to finish. So he wrote the business plan. We assembled a team, found some coaching. I mean, it was a pretty quick. I was kind of thinking it would be next year, and he's like,
Yep.
"Oh no, we're gonna play this year." I was like,
Yep.
"Oh,
This
okay."
is happening now.
And he's like,
Wow.
"And we're gonna try to win a championship." And I was like, "I love it. All right, great. I hate losing teams. Let's go for it."
Yep.
Because
Yeah, for sure.
Michigan, we're plagued with always the bridesmaid, but never the bride when it comes to professional sports. So I was like, it'd be kind of cool if we could bring a trophy home in our first year. Uh, yeah, yeah. Like I said, I love it, love it, love it. I could talk to you about that for days.
No, no, and that's pretty cool. I guess one of the other things that in terms of investing in, just really parsing out the different jewels and the nuggets that you are placing. Can you talk a little bit about like just partnership? Because again, it seems like, for example, with the Major League Indoor Soccer team, it worked well because you can focus on the business side of thing, and then you have the partner who can focus on like the athletes, the coaching, and kind of more of a like that side of things, almost like a sports team. If you think of basketball, you have the GM who's like the front office guy, and then you have the coach, and you guys can kind of work well together and make it work. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just because, and I think people. So one of my mentors, who he has like 4,000 apartment units worth over 300 million. He always says, I would rather have a portion of a watermelon as opposed to 100% of a grape. So something that's bigger, I'll take a portion of that as opposed to this small grape owning 100% and being able to go out and say, hey, I own this thing and I own that thing, but the thing is not worth that much. But feel like whether it's pride or ego, you can go out and brag and say, yeah, I own 100% of this thing. So can you kind of talk a little bit about the importance, especially when it makes sense to partner with different people who may have expertise in a particular area, such that you guys can really kind of scale and grow a company, and just kind of really optimize things as opposed to you trying to do everything on your own and maybe not as being successful. Because I'm pretty sure whether you're helping out with startups or you are doing your own thing with the Major League Soccer thing, it all
Mhm.
it's all kind of the same thing, and it plays a part as far as strategic partnerships to be able to really scale and grow and kind of really optimize the business or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, my role with a lot of these entrepreneurs, and including the three, we brought in. It's almost like the soccer team and the vodka company are siblings because we brought them in within 2 weeks of each other
Yeah.
into our program, which was kind of fun. And my business partner is I'm a pretty risk averse guy. I like to really go down into the weeds and assess things. I'll do a lot of due diligence, and
Right.
my philosophy is that if I'm investing in an idea, then I'm investing in a person because the product doesn't
Absolutely.
exist yet.
Yeah.
So, it's what's this person's ability to make, pay me back, or is there, do they have the acumen to do it, or am I going to have to do it myself? If I'm going to be holding their hand the whole time, I might as well just start my own company and,
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
and register
Yep.
the IP, and then there you go, and I'll license it out to somebody and
Yep.
make my revenue that way. So, you're investing in the entrepreneur more than anything. And thankfully I've got a business partner, Kyle. He was a bank executive for a long time. He gets how things work especially on the financial side of things when we're evaluating people and really kind of measuring the validity of an idea and trying to have that proof of concept. And I like to think of myself as a risk averse guy, but he's even more risk averse than I am.
Yeah.
So, we'll have a lot of back and forth about things, then he'll ask questions that I didn't even think of, where I'm like, "Hey, man, I guess I didn't really look at that. Yeah. What is there? If we sign a convertible note, that becomes a personal liability. Well, I didn't run a credit check on you. So, am I gonna have to take your house, to pay it back? What are we gonna do? We're not here trying to make people homeless or ruin anybody's
Right.
life if your business
Yep.
doesn't work out, and these are
Yep.
small scale. It's not like I'm giving you millions of dollars here, and seed money. So that process of that due diligence is great. But the other piece you got to remember too is like when you get into a position where you're investing in other people, especially startups, and as we continue to go down this recession road, you're going to see an increase in entrepreneurship. It's almost invertedly related. As the economy starts
Yep.
to go like this,
Yep.
entrepreneurship starts to go like that because people are losing their jobs, whatever it is. They might have some savings. I encourage them to sit down and write a business plan before they start, but that's just me. It takes like 12 weeks to do it right. Uh, but it's like you hire the best people and you just get out of the way. I don't pretend to be a subject matter expert on things that I don't know anything about, like professional sports or alcohol manufacturing. I could make myself a student of those things, but why not just trust the person that's an actual practitioner in the field?
Right.
And then, I might be able to give them different perspective or ask them tough questions as an advisor, but you're not trying to pretend like you know better. I wouldn't go up to Cristiano Ronaldo and start critiquing his ball skills.
Yeah, for
I don't
sure.
know.
Yep.
I might be able to, hey, maybe if you showered before that marketing commercial that you just shot, that might, get a couple more fans. I can maybe speak to that, but I don't know enough about the soccer side. Same thing
Right.
with alcohol, same thing with the consulting piece and technology and all these other things. You can be dangerous, by knowing just enough,
Yep.
but you just got to get the right people in the right position and just kind of get out of their way. It's that Jerry Buss mentality of, well, hey, you got some of the greatest executives and greatest players and greatest coaches. Okay, I mean, no one's going to argue that Pat Riley is not one of the best in terms of like the pantheon of NBA coaches. Pat Riley is probably second, maybe to Phil Jackson,
For
like
sure.
maybe, and then like Red Auerbach from back in the old Celtics days. So it's like you have him sitting at the helm. You've got Jerry West in the front office. There's really no reason for you to be involved in the day-to-day operations of the organization. You should be focused on, the Great Western Forum deal or, that kind of stuff. Focus on the things that you're good at, which for Jerry Buss, it was real estate and business planning,
Yep.
and same thing with his business partner. And then, let the basketball people do basketball. So for me, it's let the soccer people soccer. I'll
Yep.
worry about the business side. If you have questions, I'm here for you. I'll do my best to answer, but you're the expert, not me. That's why we invested in you. Otherwise, I'd do it myself.
Right.
So
Yep.
I mean, that's really the process. It's not rocket science, man. I mean,
Right.
people make the mistake of trying to put their hands on the wheel and do everything. And it's like, well, you can't be everything to everybody because then you're going to fail everybody.
Right.
You're going to let everybody down.
And not only that, and I think that was a good story. I think seems like you were directing that at Jerry Jones. It seems like Jerry Jones wants to do everything these days with the Cowboys
Yeah,
as opposed to
he tried.
yeah, right, for sure. But I mean, I think that's a good point because and I always tell people, even now, the way I live my life is I want people I want to do what I'm good at, and I want to hire people to do what they're good at. So, me personally, I'm not trying to paint a room or do these things that I'm like maybe average at best at. I want to like hire the professionals to do what they're good at. And I want to continue to do what I'm good at because I'll be able to, it's going to be a more efficient process and the product is going to be, a lot better at that point. I'm going to be able to, get things done quick. I'm gonna be able to save money. I'm gonna be able to, have a better product. But you do have people who are just trying to do everything, and unfortunately, you're just not an expert in everything. And I understand between the financial component comes into play in terms of can you like hire this stuff out. But I mean, I think that's something that people need to take a harder look at as far as okay, do I really know this? And if not, can I bring on somebody else that in a strategic way, obviously, that it can help out the business and uh help the
Yeah.
business grow, and it just makes sense to do it as opposed to me trying to do it and I'm failing because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just looking bad. So yeah, uh I think that's a good point that you
Yeah.
brought up.
Well, and the hard thing about entrepreneurship that you brought up too is that emotional attachment. I mean, it's a really intimate thing to share your idea with people because that's something that came out of your brain, right? That's something that you're pouring all this effort into. And it's embarrassing when it fails. So then people will double down on bad ideas or they'll, try to take the reins and do it themselves. And it's ego. And the hardest thing to do is to separate yourself from those things, and as an expert in brand strategy, I can tell you that, who you are, what you do, and why you do it as a company stems from the entrepreneur. Like Apple used to be Steve Jobs, they were synonymous with each other. I don't think any other CEO in history has had a global mourning event when they've passed away. I don't remember when Bill Bowerman died, people, you know, changing the logos on billboards and things like that. And that dude invented Nike. He
Right.
invented shoes. Yeah, he's the actual builder man of the one of the greatest brands on planet Earth. But when Steve Jobs died, right, his values, he wasn't a nice guy and he wasn't a tech guy, but he was an innovator. He was always
Right.
trying to think about end user, then we develop product, end user product, end user product. Oh, okay, cell phones exist. Well, what if we took this iPod and blended it with with a cell phone like a BlackBerry, and then it had the functionality of both? Well, people are asking for it, so now there's market demand. Now we have iPhone in 2007. So it's like to separate yourself from those things and to kind of let go of that ego is the hardest thing to do as an entrepreneur because you have to be okay with if this thing fails, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It
Yep.
doesn't mean I did anything wrong. You could do everything correct. You could hire the best advisors, have all the startup money in the world. Lucid Motors is a great example of that. They've been struggling to get product to market because they had a great idea, luxury EVs in an emerging market, but to come in as a luxury product with a new brand is always difficult. And
Yep.
it takes a lot of time. It takes a
Yep.
lot of time. And, they didn't perfect the manufacturing process before they went to market. So now they're kind of struggling a little bit. I'm sure they'll figure it out. When you have $4 billion of seed money, it's
Yeah,
pretty,
man. He helps
you'll
out.
sort it
Yeah,
out.
for sure.
They'll figure it
For
out.
sure.
But yeah. I'm not worried. Hopefully they send me one. I'd love to test drive one of the Lucid Airs, the Sapphire model, if they want to send that out to me. Uh,
Oh,
but
oh,
yeah,
that's
no, it's like that's what ends up happening is you have to be able to separate from those things
right.
and let go of it because people will get so attached to ideas where it's like, this is a great idea in 5 years. Like I promise you, if you just wait 5 years, the market will catch up or the innovation curve will catch up. You're not going to be limited by technology. We double our technological capabilities every 8 months as a species. The time between the printing press and indoor plumbing was about 700 years. So, it's like we're really increasing that rate. My smartphone has more technology in it than the Apollo rockets that sent us to the moon.
Yep.
So, we're definitely increasing. So it's like if you just wait a little bit, technology will make your life easier. Maybe it'll be cheaper, more palatable. If you spend a little bit more time on the planning side. Now, if you take it too long, then the market's going to leave.
Yep.
So you got to find that sweet spot. Just remove yourself from the equation because people are like, my marriage will fail if I don't do this. And it's like, ooh, yeah, man, you should have thought about this.
Yeah,
Should have
no, for
thought
sure.
about it.
But how do you reconcile trying to be the first to the market uh with, like you said, coming out at a time where the market is more ready for you as opposed to, a lot of times, it's almost like, we preach or it's preached, especially from a patent world, is, hey man, we want to be the first, at least filing the application, because the rights that you
Mhm.
can have from an intellectual property standpoint, but that may not always be the best thing when you're talking about kind of bringing something to market. So how do you kind of reconcile those two
Yeah,
kind
and
of ideas?
you probably see this a lot. It's like that proof of concept,
Yep.
where it's like, all right, I have this end user. Let's say you do everything right. You think about the end user first. You develop a product now that's going to get there. You understand what their ideal situation is and what the reality is. There's a big enough dichotomy there that's going to make them, trigger some sort of emotional reaction or make them make an impulsive decision. That's how marketing is done.
Yep.
So now I
Yep.
can create a product that makes, that's the vehicle now that they're going to take to get to that promised land. Great. Now there's already 7 of them like it in the marketplace. Well, okay, what are some things that they're doing well that I could do, or is there any opportunities? Sometimes the market is so well segmented that to come in as a new entrant, even though you have a great idea or whatever, you're not going to do it better than these other companies because they already have brand awareness. They have that
Right.
top of mind awareness, they already
Right.
have market share. To steal that away is extremely expensive and it takes a long time. And that strategy is that's a function of money at that point. You're going to
Yep.
burn through money and operate at a loss,
Yep.
basically trying to acquire this territory that then you're going to, you know, declare nuclear war on. Then you're going to have to rebuild it and then build some more equity. So it's going to be extremely expensive. So sometimes evaluating that market ahead of time, knowing like, all right, everybody's doing it pretty much correct because everyone's going to pitch you on like, well, yeah, sure, there might be something else out there, but mine's better. Mine's going to change the way you do whatever. And it's like, yeah, man, that's what they said too. It's like you got to remember everything that you have is created by people that aren't smarter than you,
Yep.
and they've been successful. So, whatever idea you have, somebody else has probably had it at some point, or maybe it's already in the marketplace. So, trying to be that first to market at this stage in the game, almost everything that you come up with is going to be red ocean. Most people are product based or consumer products, so they're looking for more of that high end. Some people are trying to segment a little bit more into the luxury market, whatever product that might be. So like watches is a big one. Now that we have smart watches, I'm a watch guy. I love Omega. And it's like, all right, great. So you have Apple Watch and Samsung watches and Garmin's that can do all the things that people want, and they cost a couple $100. Or you could get an Omega Seamaster Professional 300 for about 6 Gs, and it doesn't do anything but tell you the time. uh, well, what happens then when they develop a luxury smartwatch?
Yep.
Now you're in real trouble, right? The first person to come to market with that's going to be, I have a feeling it's probably going to end up being like Garmin or one of those manufacturers will probably come
Okay.
out with like a top tier. It's going to have like an actual dial, then you can flip it and it's going to have a
Yep.
digital face. That'll probably happen, or a manufacturer like a Seiko, who has a lot of different product lines. So it's like it is still possible to be an early entrant, but it's not very likely. And the best strategy for people is realizing you're not going to be the market leader. Like it's just don't even plan for that because you're planning to fail. Let's call it a home run. If you're always trying to hit a home run, what's going to happen? You're going to strike out like most
Every
of the time.
time.
You
Yep.
might get one or two, but what your stats going to look like?
For
I
sure.
was going to buy your trading card, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, the problem that people are going to have to figure out is like, can I put my ego aside and realize I'm not going to be the market leader? I'm probably not going to be the first one to invent this. If I do have patentable IP or technology or, whatever it is, my process maybe, is this going to be licensable at some point to one of those bigger competitors? Strategically placing yourself to be just enough of a nuisance, but not a real threat to where somebody wants to pay you money for your idea to just go away.
Go away.
That's a win. You'll get
Yeah, for
residuals for the
sure.
rest of your life. You probably see it all the time with the patent side. It's like, I'll license my IP. I don't care if my name's on it as long as I'm getting a paycheck, you know? So
No, yeah,
I think that's really yeah, you got to be okay with it.
yeah, no, yeah. And I think you have companies such as Amazon, Microsoft, some of these big corporations that pay you a lot of money to go away. So I think that is a good point. Well, it seems like just tempering expectations is important. As opposed to just trying to come out and think, I see it all the time where they think they invented the next best thing since sliced bread, and it's like, man, let's hold up. This is actually out there already. It just never made it to market. But it is as you search this patent database, it's actually already out there. Just for one reason or another, never made it to market, so you didn't hear about it. But this is not new stuff that you're trying to do. So,
Yeah,
no,
and a lot of that can be solved with market research too. I mean, if you do some primary and secondary research and do some case studies
yeah,
on products that are similar to yours, you're gonna be like, "Ugh, this might not be a great idea."
yeah, for sure. No, that's absolutely right. I know I want to be conscious of your time, but I do have two last things that I want to talk about. We kind of brought this up a little bit as far as the Zini vodka. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of how that came about? And then, because again, I think we're talking maybe offline or whatnot, where this space is more or less a saturated space. So how did you get off into uh, Zini vodka uh, from an investment standpoint?
Yeah, and full disclaimer, I'm a beer and bourbon guy. I'm not a vodka drinker.
That
But I did
that's
try.
important in the
It's
story.
always good. So yeah, yeah. I like James Bond. I'll have one of those little, shaken not stirred
Yep.
martinis or whatever if I'm feeling kind of fancy. But no, it came about. I'm trying to remember the sequence of events here. We had our summer kickoff for the nonprofit, where we were, basically asking people to volunteer time as community mentors to some of our entrepreneurs that we were working with at the time. Like, hey, we got a guy that's got a tech idea, but he couldn't go to Lakeshore Advantage in their tech incubator because they didn't have space for him. You're a tech entrepreneur. Could you partner with this person or just mentor them a little bit? And KV Lennon was there, and she's actually the supplier diversity manager for Meyer Corporate. So to have somebody that got that much experience in supply chain and in purchasing and in retailing and merchandising to come to you with a product idea, I mean, that almost never happens where you have
Yeah.
the right entrepreneur with the right idea, because the brand is all about, the identity of just being different, being a woman from Laos, coming here in the United States and creating a vodka brand that's lychee flavored. That's unique. That's new. That's, people are always looking for something like that. Um, so I was like, oh, okay. She needed a little bit of, I think it was some consulting or advising at first. And I just kind of walked her through a few things. Like she bought me some, a birthday lunch back in July out at Muskegon Hobo's Tavern. It's my place.
Good
Love
food.
that
That's
place.
good food. Out north.
2 pounds of chicken wings every time I go in there. 2 pounds of hot tangy chicken wings with a side of fries. Yeah, but anyway, so we got together. I gave her some of it. She kind of gave me this rundown where, she didn't really have a business plan. She developed this product. She had a great idea. She knew enough about the market and enough about the space to really get into it. But then she was running into classic problems that I deal with every day, which is, what do I do now? What do I, here, revenues exceeding expectations, but our production capacity is low, or, we're licensing the brand from this LLC and paying a management fee to mitigate our tax liabilities. There's a lot of moving
Right.
parts that if you haven't sat down and just written a playbook, you're gonna have a lot of questions. And then it turned into well, hey, the nonprofit can't really help you because you're already in market, and you're already achieving revenue. So you're not necessarily in the ideation phase anymore. It's like, but my holding company might be able to help you out with some consulting and with some financial assistance. And really with her, it was just, here's a quick checklist of like what you should probably look into. Then go talk to your attorneys about it. We'll sign a convertible note and give you some money. So then, we don't convert to equity for, X amount of months or years or whatever it was with, X amount of interest on it. Um, and then we'll just get out of your way. If you need something, call me. And that's really what it was. And now she's exploding. I mean, she's everywhere. I'll get a call from her. She'll be like, oh, I'm in Vegas this week, or I'm in California. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. People like vodka out there? Yeah, that's shocking. Yeah, other breaking
Okay.
news is that water's wet, So, well, once again, right entrepreneur, right situation, you just kind of get out of the way and you wait for them to come to you. I have scheduled calls and, kind of interventions where I'll just proactively reach out like, oh, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. How you doing? Because
Right.
sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and I'll ask some
Yep.
tough questions. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I've been lucky, right? I find the right people in the right situation, and we get them there. There's been a few that have come across my lab where I've had to say, like, great idea, great entrepreneur, but wrong time.
Okay.
Maybe we should shelf that. Maybe we should put a little bit more time into it before we get to the actual commercialization phase. Because as you know, like once you hit the market, it's hard to go back
Yep.
to the drawing board, right? So if you go through these like 7 steps of product development, you get to, let's say, that like internal and external scan of like internally the feasibility. You're an engineer, okay? So operationally, is this even feasible to produce at scale? Is it gonna, do we have to do plastic injection molding? Do we have to do tool and die? Do we have to retool a shop floor? What's our shipping process gonna look like? How much is the retail space gonna cost? Are we a wholesaler or not? Are we B2B? Right now, we're going direct to consumer. Are we online? Then you look at the external piece, which is like the consumer. How are people gonna perceive this product? If you can go through that process before you hit commercialization, you'll probably be okay. It's not a guarantee that you'll make it, but
Right.
you'll be better off than most people. I mean, how many times you go to the store and you see something that you liked and then the next week it's gone,
Yep.
because they got gobbled up by somebody else or they just went out of business because they didn't realize that having dolphin safe plastic packaging costs $15 more to produce for a $6 bag of chips. So,
Yep.
it's great that you're sending a piece of toast to the kids at Boise, Idaho, but, you're operationally just not there.
Yep.
Yeah.
and is that
So
all?
like I said, I mean,
Is that all?
we turned them away, but I hate saying no.
Yeah, no, I mean it's tough, but man, I think this is good stuff just because it gives. Because again, I'm pretty sure the audience, the viewers, they're like you said, as we kind of get deeper into this recession, you're going to see a lot more entrepreneurs, and as you are, as they are, like kind of thinking about entrepreneurship and trying to bring to market their ideals. I think this is good stuff to think about and consider, and at least be able to answer before they kind of make it to that step, or before they
Mm,
call you to say, hey, help, help, help. So no, that's good. And then I guess the last thing I have, uh, is just the adjunct professor. How did that come about? Because we talked about at the
mm.
beginning of this interview of you wanting to always be a teacher, and it seems like that has come full circle with you being able to do that. So I guess how did that come about? I know you're an adjunct at Grand Rapids Community College, if I'm not mistaken, and like what type of things that do you teach? You tell us a little bit about that as we wrap up.
Yeah, I teach 12 credits, which is I could consider full time, but an adjunct faculty at a community college level, there's really not like a tenured and associate and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff like what you'll get at a 4 year school. But I was asked several times to do it. I was giving a lot of guest lectures, a lot of kind of mini TED talks all over the country. At that point, I'll go down to Tulane, or I'd go to Grand Valley, or I'll go to Texas A&M, wherever I was at the time, and I would go and present case studies and talk to all these students and do these kind of innovation incubator activities over the course of however many days I was in town, and I really liked it. I guest lectured a few times as a graduate student at Aquinas. It's amazing when you're sitting on that side of the podium, when you can actually see when the learning happens. You can actually see it click in somebody's head,
Oh,
or you
really?
go, oh, okay, yeah, and then they write it down. And yeah, you can actually literally see the learning happen. And I was like, I probably have some value to offer to students, especially as someone who's actually been a practitioner in the field, but academically I'm credentialed as well, so it works out. Where you try to take the best of both worlds. And eventually at one point in time, one of my professors from Aquinas, he's actually the department chair at GRCC where I teach now. And he kept, years and years and years, he kept calling me. I mean, my wife and I were taking a vacation in Alaska, and I was driving through the Denali National Forest, and he called me. He's like, "Hey, man, you gotta come teach, man. I've got this open. You gotta come teach. Like, these students are gonna love you." And being a younger guy, I'm not 85 years old up
Yeah.
there talking about digital marketing and that,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that worked out. But yeah, I mean, I was able to get into it, and I taught. I think my first semester of like full time in it, I think I taught like a mix. I think I taught business innovation, marketing, and entrepreneurship. GRCC has a entrepreneurship certificate, so you don't need to get a degree, but you'll take a couple business electives, and then BA 105, which is the business plan writing, and then BA 106, which is long business. Um, so we'll walk you through the business planning stage all the way up to commercialization. And then there's obviously a lot of grant opportunities and the MWest Business Challenge, which I'm a judge of every year, and I coach my students through it. Um, and so there was a lot of cool opportunities there, and I got to sit on the business advisory committees, and I was like, all right, there might be something to this. I don't know yet. I really liked having car companies send me a new vehicle because I was doing some consulting, or getting to travel, all over the world or whatever it was. I really enjoyed that. It had a lot of perks. But then when the pandemic came, I was like, it might be time to change. I actually like being home, and so I was like, maybe I'll settle some old scores with some of my faculty pals, and we'll see what we can come up with. And I kind of thought at first it would be harder than it was, but it came kind of naturally. I realized as a consultant, you're kind of teaching at that point. Yeah. I thought it was going to be really hard to learn how to teach. And it turned out I was like, well, I'm basically just consulting. The book will give me knowledge. I'll teach you skills in a lecture, and then I'll measure your abilities based off your exams, your activities, your projects, or in-class conversations. So you're going to learn through experience. And that curriculum model, it turns out it works. It was a random idea I had. I was like, let's try it this way. It works out. So, hope no one's dropped yet. Knock on some wood, right? No one's
Right,
dropping.
right.
We'll see. But
But yeah, man.
now I'll teach 12 credit terms. So yeah.
No, yeah, you're doing some teaching for sure at 12 credits. But no, I mean, I always appreciated just, whether it was undergrad or law school, just the adjunct professors, because again, they're not just kind of giving me the theory that, is taught in a book, but just the real world application of what they're seeing out in the
Mhm.
field day in and day out. And that just kind of, intensified, my understanding and appreciation for, whatever it was that I was, I guess, learning in that particular class. So that's big. So again, I know you have to run here. So I guess I'll want to ask you first, how can maybe people follow you? How can people get in touch with you? And just any last words that you kind of want to leave us out on.
Yeah, you can always follow us. It's mcfei.org if you want to stay up to date with the Innovation Center and all the stuff we're doing there. We've got some big news coming in April with that one, so that'll be kind of exciting. And then our next application portal for our Innovation Fellowship will open in June, on June 1st.
Okay.
So that'll be kind of cool. So people can come in and do their business pitch, and then we'll see if there's enough there to actually give them that seed money and that coaching. But you can always follow me on LinkedIn. You just search my name, I'll show up. You'll see a nice picture of me with a nice suit on, and the little smirk. But yeah, like I said, I mean, it's dangerous. I love what you're doing here, man. Trying to get some advice out to people because it's important. Financial literacy is something that's not really talked about in a lot of communities. I mean,
Yep,
and a lot of people talk about a lot of things they've never done, and they do a lot of things they never talk about.
for
And the
sure.
things that they never talk about are probably what people need to hear the most.
For sure.
So
Yep.
yeah, I love it, man. Yeah, we'll have
Oh
to do it
yeah.
again sometime.
No, definitely. And just kind of coming from, I mean, this actually worked out perfect because we were actually from the same like town growing up.
Yeah.
Grew up in the same town, so that made it even more unique. But just kind of from the African American community, I know, it's kind of from the Hispanic community. Just that's like what we are kind of getting a chance to do. That is with the financial literacy and understanding and outdoing. That's something that seems like we can use more of in our communities. So I'm and and I was getting so much like, "Hey, man, can you help me out with this? Help me out with that?" And I'm doing so much kinda in my day-to-day life that it's like, man, I can't coach everyone. So and then even if I could, I just bring my unique experience or my experience that I'm giving you, but, uh, that's not to say that what worked for me is gonna work for you. So hopefully, with me bringing on different people and they can kinda give you their different experiences and how they look at things and what they're doing, hopefully the viewer can at least identify with one or more of these people and say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to do this like this person did it, or I'm gonna kind of tweak what I'm doing in a way that this
Mhm.
other person that I heard doing it, and it just gives you more options and hopefully kind of a fuller picture as opposed to just kind of my one experience, and that's definitely not no, that's just my one experience. It's not That's not to say it's going to work for you in the same way that it worked for me. So just being able to give other, I mean, I've learned, and then that's selfishly for me, honestly, just being able to learn. I sit here and take notes based on the things that you're saying, just because I want to learn and be able to be more well rounded as well. So I mean, I learn as well from these interviews. So I'm sure that the audience can take something, apply it, and see the successes. Then just kind of hopefully grow the network as well. So no, yeah, I definitely appreciate you doing this, and I will. Yeah, we definitely have to do this sometime again. I'm sure you're steady
Mhm.
moving, doing things, shaking, making things shake. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be something else to talk about. I guess as time progresses.
Yeah, man. Yeah. All right. Well, you hit me up whenever. So.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, Devin. So until next time, TEI family, we're logging off here. Take care.